Good evening. I hereby call to order the October 26, 2022 meeting of the Gaithersburg Historic District Commission. For our roll call, please answer present when I call your name. Deputy City Attorney Frank Johnson.
Present.
Planner 2, Chris Berger.
Present.
Community Planning Manager Greg Mann.
Present.
Alternate Commissioner Kathleen Ramirez.
Present.
Commissioner Mary Jo LaFrance, we hear, is on her way. Say present. I'll recognize that she's present. Commissioner Mark Feinstein.
Present.
And Commissioner and Chairman Diamantolo says present. So we have a quorum, and Commissioner Ramirez's role tonight is as a full commissioner. So next is our preliminary statement, which is as follows. This commission is empowered to meet and act under Article 12 of the City Code of Gaithersburg. The technical qualifications of the staff of this commission and the members of the commission are on file with the City of Gaithersburg, are available on request to any applicant, and are hereby made a part of the legal record of each and every application heard today. Each application heard today is considered on its own merits and is not to be considered as establishing precedent for any other application. Okay, does anyone have any conflicts of interest for anything we're going to be reviewing tonight? No? Okay, I hear and see no one. All right, very good. There is one set of meeting minutes that we need to approve, which is from our August 24th, 2022 meeting. So does any commissioner have any corrections or additions to the minutes that they'd like to see made? Okay. Yeah, okay, very good. All right, so I will make a motion to adopt the minutes. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So all those in favor of voting for the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
And any nay? I'll say aye. Any nay or abstain? Aye. Aye? Okay, so that would be 4-0. It passes. Okay, next we have a courtesy review, which is SP 9149-2021, which is a courtesy review of two multifamily buildings at 9, 11, and 15 Park Avenue and 201 Brookes Avenue in the CBD Central Business District Zone. May we have an introduction from staff, please?
Yes, this application comes before the HDC in accordance with Section 24-2274 of the City Code, which requires the HDC to review and make recommendations, if any, to the Planning Commission on applications for site development approvals within courtesy review areas. The properties scheduled for redevelopment are located in the Old Town courtesy review area. And we have drone footage, which you've seen before, but I'll play again. Per the City Code on courtesy reviews, the HDC recommendations shall provide analysis and comment upon the following matters. Architectural compatibility, including such elements as signs, masonry and architectural features, width and height of buildings and structures, roof, door, and window styles, and other elements contained within the adopted guidelines of the Historic District Commission. The effect or impact upon the preservation and protection of buildings, structures, or districts designated historic, and the effects or impact upon historic appurtenances and environmental settings. Staff notes that this is a concept site plan, so the details are not yet finalized on the plans. The HDC will provide a courtesy review of the final site plan in the future, at which point the details will be finalized. The applicant proposes two multifamily buildings, a 4-story, 47-foot tall multifamily building at the corner of Park and Brookes Avenue, measuring 59,130 square feet, and a 5-story, 58-foot tall multifamily building along Park Avenue, measuring 122,953 square feet. Building A will include a 44-space parking garage, and Building B will have a 67-space garage. Building B will also include 2,217 square feet of ground floor commercial space along Park Avenue. There's a city-owned alley that bisects the two proposed buildings. It will be improved to a 31-foot commercial service road, which will provide vehicular access to the parking. Joining us tonight to present the plans, we have the owner of the properties, Shaquille. What's your last name, sir?
Siddiqui.
And we have from SMBW Architect, Spencer Grice.
Yes. Okay.
And I will turn on their You're good to go.
Okay, well, welcome to you.
Thank
And for either one or both of you, if you're going to be speaking tonight, we'd like to have you sworn in. Frank, can you do the honors?
Forgot that the HDC has the attorney doing that. If you would raise your right hands and repeat after me. I do swear or affirm that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to the best of my knowledge in presenting information tonight on this case.
Thank you so much. Welcome and please commence.
Okay, thank you. Again, I'm Spencer Grice, principal with SMBW Architects. Thank you for having us back for the courtesy review. I know people have seen sort of different versions of this as it's evolved along. If I click,
Yes.
okay, just click the screen.
Yeah, you can use the down arrow or you can scroll.
As it has evolved, we've gone through a lot of meetings with planning, we've gone through a lot of meetings with the community, with you guys, and so the project has taken sort of a lot of information from all those groups and has evolved as it's gone. What we're presenting today, I think as Chris said, is a pretty solidified concept in terms of the mass of the building and materials that we're thinking about, fenestration, scale, kind of the rhythm and things like that, but obviously we're not into details, architectural details or anything of the finer of the building, but that will come. But what you're going to see really is a culmination of all the input that we've gotten so far. So I think, as Chris said, you know, when we first started looking at the project, looking at the neighborhood and the lots that were aggregated, we had early meetings with planning. We wanted to understand sort of the district we were in, where the multifamily was, where the density was growing, where the retail and commercial, and where this set with all that. So this really is just kind of illustrate how the neighborhood has developed around us and sort of what we look like. You know, when the project first started, it was 5 stories all the way across. One of the things that we did look at is on the building, the corner of Park and Brookes. We did take a floor off of that. The community wanted less height, so we did that. We kept the 5 stories on the building further up Park Street. Obviously, you saw the drone footage, but this is the site. One of the things to say about this is one of the features of the site is that it's not contiguous. You know, we've got this commercial service road that the master plan envisioned that would wrap through this site. So this development will build kind of the first portion of that coming off of Park Avenue. And as I understand the purpose of the road, it is to provide access, I think, to a lot of these retail businesses. So you can load, you can park. It takes stress off the streets and puts that traffic kind of the interior of these blocks. So basically what you see, if you can see the cursor in the red, we're going to build that much of that commercial service road to access our parking on both buildings. And then as other lots develop, they will continue with that road through the middle of the block. So looking at the site plan, you know, we've done, outside of the architectural work, we've done a lot of work on utilities, we've done a lot of work on sort of green space and work on stormwater management. So that stuff has come along to try to understand how we're going to solve those problems in sort of a mass way on the site, because all that impacts the amount of parking and where the buildings sit. So as you look at the site plan here, the building on the left is the 4-story building at Park and Brookes. One of the other things that I think both planning and the community came to, we originally had the ground floor of this building to be retail as well. And retail could be office, it could be small retail shops, it could be restaurant. We weren't really focused on the type of retail or commercial, but it was public space. I think everyone decided they would much rather see, and it would be more successful to have residential on that ground floor. So this building is all residential. And the ground floor units are kind of walk-in, sort of townhouse style, little front stoops. I think the community, I think planning felt that it better addressed that part of the street. There was still some single family across the street. So that's that building. And the building is contiguous really from our lot line on Brookes all the way around to the lot line at the new commercial service road. And then all the parking is in the back. So the parking is not visible from the street. I think it's a requirement of planning that we screen all of that parking, which we have done. So that building has surface parking behind it. Then on the other side of the commercial service road is the larger building. It's the 5-story building. We have kept commercial in the ground floor of that building. The thought being it's closer to the commercial district as we move up Park. It probably has maybe a little more opportunity for success for a commercial tenant on the ground floor. It's not a big amount of commercial, but it could be a nice small commercial element in the neighborhood. So that has got that on the ground floor, and then everything above is residential apartments. And you can see the way we've structured this, you come off the commercial service road, you can take a left into the parking on the Park and Brookes building, 4-story, or you can take a right into the parking on the 5-story building. So all of the traffic comes to the commercial service road before it comes out to Park Avenue. And that's just, I think it helps with the stress. We are parking this thing, we are over parking the development in a sense, so that we've got more spaces than units. And so we've got, what you don't really see here is on the building on the right, the 5-story building, there's surface parking, and then there's a full below grade deck under that building that parks a whole another 60, 70 spaces. I forget the exact number. So that's how we're getting to our parking. The development is self-sustaining. Outside of that, you've got entrances to the 2 buildings. They front both the street and the back, so that residents can park and come in the back, but they can also walk out of the building, and the building does address the street, so that, you know, the retail addresses the street, the ground floor units in the 4-story building address the street. I think one of the things that we like, especially in more urban environments, is you want to activate the street. So you want people to come out on the street, you want them to be connected to the street, to the neighborhood. It's important for communities. It obviously gets people invested to the right of way. You know, one of the things that the development does do that was part of the master plan is it dedicates land so that we get a better right of way down Park, so that we get what planning wants for a green space and trees and a sidewalk. So it's a more contiguous line. We dedicated a long strip along Park from the commercial service road to Brookes, so that we could get that consistent right of way through there. We included this just because it's part of what we're developing on the site development. So in addition to stormwater, is it possible to go? There we go. I won't point out all of it, but sort of the hatched areas you can see on here is where we're collecting all our stormwater. And it's stormwater for holding and for treatment. So it's water quality and quantity. And then part of that exercise has been tree cover, because there are requirements for the amount of tree cover that we put back to make sure that we maintain on the project. So this is the early development on where we are going to put trees in green space to make sure that we meet the right-of-way requirements, but also the tree cover requirements that we need to put green back into the neighborhood. So this is standing at the corner of Park and Brookes, looking, go back here real quick, just in case you're looking at the building this way. So you're looking at the corner of the 4-story building and then looking down Park Avenue. The building has 3 basic materials. It's probably 60, maybe 50% brick, it's maybe 30% panel, and then the rest of it's windows. You know, it's sort of residential size windows. Typically, in something like this, we'll end up with a double hung style window, which is a little bit more residential. We'll gang them together to get, you know, bigger light, bigger fenestration in the apartments, but we'll scale the windows by aggregating them together, as rather than having like large picture windows that feel more commercial. So the fenestration will feel residential. We have balconies. Not all the apartments have balconies, but we have used them to help modulate the facade a little bit and get something that feels more like a townhouse or row house rhythm to it as you go down Park Avenue especially. And we've used the balconies to help divide that up and again, put some activity on the street. So the red that you see is the brick. We haven't chosen the exact color, but I think everyone agreed that it's something, that family of color was the right thing for the neighborhood. And then a darker panel color, you know, this might be it might be a metal panel, it might be like a cement board panel. We haven't chosen it yet, but it will be a panel, a jointed panel that will either be painted or will be factory colored, something like that. And then on the ground floor, especially on the four-story building, you know, we're bringing the brick down sort of as piers, but larger windows and have stoops in the front doors, and those units open up out onto the sidewalk. And then back here, you can see where the five-story building, you can see where it steps up. One of the things that we are looking to do on the 5th floor, and I think this was discussions with planning and also the community, was to set that back. So the whole 5th floor sets back about 5 feet. And that does two things. One, it gives terrace space for the tenants to have, but it also minimizes that 5th floor, and the view shed just pushes it back off a little bit. So you read that 4-story line stronger running through the whole development, and then the 5th story becomes a little recessive. So here you're looking straight down the commercial service road that divides the two. Again, you can see the rhythm we're trying to set up by breaking down the facade so it doesn't feel as massive on the street. We get more of a row house sort of feel as it walks along, using those balconies to divide that and create that rhythm. And it's the same thing when you turn down the commercial service road. You were trying to find a rhythm that feels more residential to break up the volume and the scale of the building. This is pretty indicative of kind of the tree cover that'll go in on day one with our tree plan. Again, a little bit of a work in progress, but if anything, it's probably will grow to be more trees, not less, as that develops along. Again, just straight down the commercial service road between the two buildings. Now you're down at the very other end. You're at the end of the 5-story building, looking back down Park towards the 4-story building. Just trying to illustrate how that steps down as you move down towards the corner of Park and Brookes. You'll see there's a little bit more glass down here on the 5-story building on the ground floor where the commercial space will be. That again will open up out onto the streetscape. And then this is just a shot coming all the way back around. So you're standing on Brookes Avenue and you're looking at that end of the building. You'll see right here, this car really is not on our property, but we've screened the parking and you're looking back sort of into the inside of the development in a sense. So, you know, at some point, something may develop along here, but again, I think planning wanted us to put a more permanent wall along our property line. So from the neighbor property or from coming down Brookes towards Park, you would never get a view into that parking lot. You would only see building or screen wall, which will be brick. So it's kind of hard to see, but this is a brick screen wall. It really closes off that last open piece of parking that's on the back side of the building. And I believe that's it. So happy to go back and answer any questions or.
Okay. Do you guys want to answer questions or hear from the public first?
I have some questions,
You want to hear questions? You want to do questions right now for the applicant?
if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
I saw that in the site plan, there were 20 small to medium-sized trees that were planned. What type of trees were you planning on putting in?
So I can't answer that, and I'm sorry, but it's our civil engineer, Christopher Consultants, has been developing the tree plan and the stormwater and all of that. So I don't have that answer, but it will be compliant with planning or whatever. If there's a requirement, it'll be compliant with that. If not, I think we're open. I mean, if someone has suggestions or the neighborhood has suggestions, if it's not in conflict with what planning might require. I think we're open.
You guys have any other questions?
I just want to make a comment quickly about trees. The city staff does have an arborist, and they're very well aware of what trees are natural in the area, and they would be very helpful in this case.
Okay, stay where you guys are. Do you guys have any other further questions? We're going to come back to them after we hear from the public.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have questions, but why don't we
Yeah,
hear from the public?
That's what I think. Okay, very good. All right, so the public is now invited to speak. In-person participants, please line up at the podium to be sworn in. If anybody's interested in speaking tonight for or against this courtesy review. Okay, well, now, before you begin, you are allowed to address anything that you want to on any subjects that you feel compelled to discuss. But I think that, I do want to say that your efforts towards focusing on the courtesy review itself will be the most helpful to this particular project or to Gaithersburg, just because that is not just the item that we're discussing, but it could affect the way these proposed buildings will be developed. And before you begin, I just want to run down that list real quickly of what we will be doing and therefore what you guys should be addressing. And very simply, items such as the architectural compatibility, including such elements as signs, masonry, architectural details, width and height of buildings and structures, roof, door, window styles, and other elements contained in the adopted guidelines, that type of thing. So, okay, so please state your name and your district or your local area.
My name is Mike Sesma.
Okay.
I'm a resident of the West Riding neighborhood.
Mr. Chair,
Okay, then
and
we
I am
will-
sorry to interrupt, but
we're gonna
Mr.
swear.
Chair did,
Ready to be sworn.
yes, I think we're swearing everybody in.
Everybody.
Why don't we, if anybody intends to testify for or against, if we can collectively swear everybody in at once, if that is okay? If you would all raise your hand and would say repeat after me or affirm at the end that I do swear or affirm that in presenting the information tonight, I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to the best of my knowledge and understanding.
I so affirm.
Very good. Confirm. All right.
Thank you.
Begin whenever you like.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. My previous testimony on the status of the properties on Park and Brooks that would be demolished to realize this proposal, I limited my comments to that specific issue. Today, I'm here to talk about the consideration of the courtesy review here. I said I would be back to comment on the elements of this development proposal, so here I am. I'm in strong agreement with the issues, observations, and facts laid out in the letter from Judy Christensen, which is in your package, including pointing out errors in the staff report that she identified. Those should be corrected for the record by the city. I'll add that the charge given to the HDC in this courtesy review is to consider, you shall consider, and I'll repeat what you already told us in paraphrasing, the architectural compatibility of this project, the effect or impact upon the preservation and protection of buildings, structures, or districts designated historic, and the effect of impact upon historic appurtenances and environmental settings. So the project is deficient on all of these issues. From my experience and perspective as a member of the council and a former member of and a former historic district commissioner, the development plan is not in conformity with the 2018 Historic Preservation Master Plan, the Old Town Master Plan, or the Old Town Design Guidelines. The scale is not compatible with this site, and the proposed density can only be accomplished with a height waiver that makes that scale even more extreme and incompatible with the set. The applicant provides a checklist of how this project addresses development and redevelopment priorities, but fails to acknowledge the significant burdens and impact this project would have on the existing street and pedestrian infrastructure and the setting in the center of Old Town. As a member of the City Council, I did consider and voted for projects like this one, but this setting is not comparable to those projects. None of those projects directly confronted or addressed an established single-family home neighborhood with features obvious and reflecting the historic nature of the neighborhood and the city. Those other projects were located on main, major, and wider streets. They had the road infrastructure to support the residential density without creating traffic and safety burdens for the residents immediately proximate to their location. The HDC should not provide a favorable recommendation for this project. It does little to enhance and complement the community in which it will lie. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perfect timing. Hello.
Hi, how are
welcome.
you?
Please state your name and either your address or your district.
My name is Vasilios Gatsados. I live on Brookes Avenue near Park. And I wanted to bring up I wanted to find out if there had been any traffic studies done, because anybody who's been on East Diamond and Summit in the morning or afternoon knows that it is a cluster, you know what. And there's not 250 cars going in and out now, you know. I was just wondering if been any consideration on, you know, how that can maybe be more efficiently done, or how this project might hinder the traffic even further. If there's anything that the council can do or, you know, has discussed in the past relating to traffic around that area.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wouldn't that be for this project?
Well, or the applicant. Do you guys have any information on that, on traffic studies and the cars? Or do you, Chris, does anybody in the city have anything on that?
It will be required for final site plan.
Okay, so we don't have any right now.
There's no
you
traffic
think?
study.
Right.
Okay.
One will be done.
Okay. So you guys don't have any idea what the traffic would be, the count and all of that?
We have a unit count, so we have a rough count of what the cars are likely going to be based on the unit count.
The city regulations don't require them at the concept site plan stage, they actually require them at the preliminary and final stages.
Okay.
So the one will be done as required per the city code.
Okay, thank you very much, and I guess that answers the question posed. Welcome, please state your name and your
Hi, my
district
name is
or
Clark
address.
Dale. I live on Walker Avenue.
Welcome.
First, I want to commend the HDC for sticking to their guns and continuing to uphold the parameters laid out by the Department of the Interior regarding historic preservation in your recommendation that the council designate a couple of the properties in this parcel. I was involved with the stripping of the HDC responsibilities from the council in about 2010, which established an independent, impartial HDC. And this project in particular has shown me that it's almost just taken any kind of backbone or any kind of teeth away from the Historic District Committee. You all are professionals, you're architects, you're attorneys, you're, you know, historic home huggers. And you couldn't have the same people being on the council and then turning their hats around and being on the HDC. And I'm glad that we have you, and I hope that we continue to have you. But it seems that we continue to get recommendations from staff that more times than not are regarded as some kind of gospel. And I was particularly appalled by the recommendations at the meeting with the council, where the staff recommendations were very incomplete and failed to include information that showed the Historic District Commission's resolve to uphold the Department of the Interior's parameters for historic preservation. So I'm not in favor of this project, as if you couldn't tell, but I am in favor of the HDC and an HDC that is, I guess, still quasi-judicial. But I just think that You need to be heard more. And I'm not questioning the independence of your thinking, because you've proven that, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Welcome. Please
Hi.
state your name and your address.
Ed
or
Richmond
district.
on Walker Avenue. First, I want to thank the commission for your efforts over the summer regarding preservation. I'm sorry the way things turned out, but I hope that that result doesn't deter you from applying the same standards to evaluating this project, which I believe does not really fit in with the neighborhood at all. Honestly, when I look at the drawings, it takes me back to my youth in Cleveland, looking at tenement buildings on the east side. That's what I will be thinking of every time I see it, should it go through. So I just want to encourage you to continue to consider the neighborhood and the continuity with the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Please state your name and your address or your district.
Okay. Hi, my name is Lori Galetto. I currently live at 340 Park Avenue and have been a Gaithersburg resident since 2011.
Thank you.
I frequently walk and drive along Park Avenue through Old Town and applaud the decision of this commission that found 15 Park Avenue to be historic. When I looked at the site plan, I was overwhelmed by the massive size and footprint relative to the available land and neighboring businesses and homes. In my opinion, the proposed structures of this size look out of place. I also have major concerns regarding the increase in traffic on Park Avenue. Due to the current traffic volumes and speeding cars, I already have safety concerns now. These streets are already congested at rush hour and at peak school hours. I don't believe the proposed site plan is compatible with current Old Town infrastructure and with the existing neighboring homes. I hope that the historic designation is attained, but if not, as a resident and property owner on Park Avenue, I strongly object to the proposed site plan and to the style and scale of the development. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Anyone else from the public who is present?
Hi,
Hello, welcome. Please state your name and your address or your district.
Susan Zanner. I live on Russell Avenue.
Thank you.
So I so thank you for what you did over the summer as well. It made a big difference to all of us that live here. My concerns are like everybody else that live in the zip code of 20877. It's heartbreaking that the homes that are currently there will be obliterated soon, and that's going to forever change the landscape of Gaithersburg. My concerns are centered around architectural integrity of the community. You know, these buildings are big and, you know, it's hard to do. It's lovely what you're doing, but at the same time, it just doesn't really fit in my opinion. Any building, I think, should mimic the surrounding homes and not stick out. I do not believe there's room in that space for all the people it plans for either. The tight quarters in that area and the general turmoil of adding a minimum of 250 extra cars or extra people in a community where there's no place to go in a walking distance is not really workable. And adding at least 200 extra cars on our formerly quiet Park Avenue and spreading to all the other neighborhood streets is really beyond reason, in my opinion. Living on Russell Avenue, I've seen the changes in the past few years, and the cars are more and faster and dangerous. And if you add all those cars in this little bitty area, it's going to be really hard. So I'm just hoping that we can have you all consider modifications for this project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Last call? Okay. Chris, do we have anybody who's waiting online?
We do, but perhaps tech team can play the introduction video.
Good evening. If you've connected to the meeting tonight via Zoom and you're on a desktop or a laptop and you wish to make a public comment, we can't currently see or hear you. What you need to do, please, is wiggle your mouse around and look towards the bottom center of your screen. You should see a raise hand button. Go ahead and click on that now for us, please. Alternatively, if you've connected in via telephone, you can press *9.
Tech team can bring over Susie Ward first.
Welcome, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hold on, please, to be sworn in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, I mean, what,
Oh, yes, the,
you
this is
can't
the
really see me,
online.
but I have my hand raised.
Okay, if you have your hand
Great,
raised, that's
doing
what I'm looking at too, so that's the awkward part. If you just repeat after me or affirm at the end, I do swear or affirm that I will speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in my presentation tonight.
I agree with that. I swear that I will.
Okay, very good. Begin whenever you like.
Okay. My name is Susie Ward. I live on Gaither Street in East Deer Park. I do appreciate the work that you have done, Historic District Commissioners, but I ask that you would not recommend this project to the Planning Commission. It is not appropriate in scale or design for this old town location. It does not comply with the Gaithersburg Master Plan for Historic Preservation, the Old Town Master Plan, or the Old Town Business District Design Guidelines. It does not enhance the neighborhood. It is not compatible with the architectural design of the buildings across Park Avenue, and it will destroy the character of this historic neighborhood. They did not tear down Old Town Frederick to revitalize it. They renovated it, and it is thriving. We must restore and breathe new life into Old Town, not demolish it and create something completely different. We do not need another Kentlands or Rio. Gaithersburg already has its own charm. The city must solicit developers who are interested in preserving the essence of what Gaithersburg is. Without Old Town, there is no Gaithersburg. These historic structures can be saved, renovated, and reused. The lots are long and density can be added in the rear of the structures, serving as housing or businesses. Alternatively, green space and trees could be preserved to retain and enhance the environment that's being eroded, secondary to development and traffic. Gaithersburg is a tree city. It must retain its designation. With the environment in mind, all those apartments that are going to be built will not only will it be more exhaust to pollute the environment, but there'll be more paved surface, causing more water runoff issues and heating the atmosphere to a greater degree. We must be thinking of ways to decrease our carbon footprint and cool the climate, not the opposite. This plan does not have very much green space that I can see. The founders of Gaithersburg were farmers and close to the earth. They knew about taking care of the environment because it affected their livelihoods. A healthy environment has historically been a characteristic that Gaithersburg could count on as being here for its citizens. We must not let our healthy environment be destroyed any more than we can allow our historic buildings to be demolished. Traffic is going to be a big issue. The 2-lane roads, Park, Summit, Brookes, Diamond, they're all congested already. This plan also does not address where all the children who live there will attend school. Gaithersburg Elementary School is already over capacity with many portable classrooms. I believe the commission should stand by its findings. The infrastructure and amenities for Old Town are already lacking. We cannot stand by and let Old Town be torn down and demolished, one building at a time.
Ma'am, okay, thank you. Your 3 minutes is up. I know we appreciate what you've offered us. Thank you.
Next, we have Joan Berkowitz.
Welcome, can you hear us?
Who is still muted.
Boy, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now. Okay, hold on to be sworn in.
Okay, if you would.
Sure. What do you want me to say?
Just hold on, we're going to recite the oath for you to
Yes, I was going to
attest.
say, you just need to raise your right hand and either repeat after me or affirm at the end. I do swear or affirm that I will tell the
I
truth,
do
the whole,
swear or affirm
that I will tell the truth and the whole truth,
the truth and the whole truth,
nothing but the truth,
nothing but the truth,
in my presentation tonight.
in my presentation tonight.
Okay.
Wonderful, thank you so
All
much.
right, we're on?
Yes, you are. Please begin whenever you want.
Okay, what I would like to say is that first, I would like to sincerely thank you, the committee, for the time and energy that you devote to this committee and for the research that you did regarding the properties that are included in the site plan. My question to the committee is, what role does the committee play when the city staff and council members disregard the professional advice that you provide? When city objectives are favored that push projects through without transparency for the public and arbitrarily condemn historic properties without community review, the residents have no voice and are not being served.
If you're waiting for an answer, we're really not allowed to have communication as far as back and forth discussion. So you can continue to speak if you like, but we're not able to respond in kind.
But you should know
It
your,
is a comment that I wish to have placed on record with the city, because I think that the city has way overstepped their bounds, and I'm very upset about it. And that is probably the end of my comment tonight.
Okay, well, thank you very much for phoning in and relaying all of that. That's very valuable, so thank you.
Next, we have Amelia Barrett.
Welcome, can you hear us?
Yes, can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes, we can. Hold on to be sworn in
Okay.
first.
Okay.
You would raise your
Yep.
right hand and either repeat after me or affirm at the end.
Yes.
I do swear or affirm that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in my presentation tonight.
I will.
Okay, welcome, and you can start whenever you like.
Hi, thank you for your time tonight. I know this is just a courtesy review of the concept site plan, but echoing other people's comments, I believe that your expert opinion and your familiarity and firsthand knowledge of the historic district is very valuable to the city, and your opinion should really be taken seriously by the Planning Commission and the council. I want to thank you for your extensive hard work and thought that you put into the resolution to designate these properties as historic. As you know, the city master plan lists all of the adjacent houses to this development as potential resources of note. This development would affect all of those resources. Park Avenue is only one of two original blocks of Old Town Gaithersburg. Therefore, anything that will change this block should align with the Historic Preservation Master Plan and enhance the historic nature and feel of this neighborhood, not detract from it, not be in stark contrast to the historic feel. As stated in the 2005 Master Plan, residential infill opportunities exist along Brookes Avenue between Park and Summit Avenue. These narrow parcels are well suited for small multifamily buildings, townhomes, or 2/2 condominiums. The current site plan is the exact opposite of this recommendation. A 5-story building may be small in the scheme of a large city or Bethesda, but not in a small historical residential compact area that already has a lot of density. In response to a statement made by the architect earlier, a narrow parcel of sidewalk or right-of-way on Park Avenue is not green space. I have studied the concept site plan, and no parts of this look similar to the era of the other homes in this neighborhood or the homes that are going to be demolished, or has any historical feel to it, or even a townhouse or row house feel as stated by him. That is just, no part of that feels like a townhouse or row house. Finally, I want to say that we as residents are frustrated and angry that your resolution was vetoed. I feel that multiple statements by the council were not factual in their meeting regarding the criteria for historic designation, which 9 Park Avenue met multiple criteria, and those statements were not corrected by the city staff. The council should have been basing their decision on the resolution that you, the HGC, passed and was presented to them. However, the city staff of one person made many comments in the memo with the staff's opinion, quote, which was misleading and not part of the resolution that they should have been voting on. So I have to ask you, what is the point of you putting in all this hard work if a singular staff member is going to put in their own opinion as well, and then the council negates all the hard work and thought you put into it? If you can be trusted to make decisions about grout color, paint color, stain color, gutter size, tree removal, only 4 houses away from these properties, in addition to granting Montgomery County Historic Tax Credit eligibility, and hope the Planning Commission and Council take your expert opinion seriously when it comes to this development as well. I hope that you reject this concept site plan outright, because it does not match any historic feel of this neighborhood, and we're only detract from it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and timing was perfect.
And one more person, we have Kay Savell.
Welcome, can you hear us? Hello, can you hear us yet?
They need to unmute themselves.
Can you unmute? I think it's down at the bottom of the screen.
And they're still not doing it, so perhaps we should move on.
Move on, okay.
Oh, there we go, unmuted.
Okay, can you hear us now?
No, they're not.
Okay, if they chime in, I guess we could take them later, perhaps, if it works out. Okay, all right, so next then, let's hear from the commissioners. Commissioner Ramirez, you're up first.
All right. Is there a limit to the number of cars per unit?
Is there a lower limit, an upper limit?
Try asking, does each unit get 2 cars assessed maximum for parking spaces?
No, not each unit. We were assigning cars per bed.
Per what?
Bed.
Per bed?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, so per beds,
Yeah.
okay.
So a 1-bedroom unit gets a car.
Just one?
Space, yes, just one.
All right. Also, are you able to tell us what the rental rates would be for a 1-bedroom versus a 2-bedroom?
These will be market rates, so whatever rates are at that point in time, if the project is ready. We can't tell you that right now. But, rates that are prevalent in the market right now.
Okay. So not affordable housing type of rental
No.
units? Okay.
This is market rate project.
And then, so can you address that issue that was raised earlier, that it's not compatible with the single-family residences that are right across from the structure? I mean, I was looking around Old Town earlier today, and I did see Park Station Apartments. I saw Archstone Community, the Belt Building, which is historic definitely, and even the Fire Museum on East Island. But none of these really face single-family homes. So in your opinion, how is your structure compatible with the rest of the community?
Well, I mean, part of the reason when we looked at this when we first started, across Brookes Avenue was all multifamily. It's similar in scale very much to what we are doing. We're 4-story on the corner. When you talk about 2 over 2 condos, that's a 4-story building, is what that ends up being when you look at that in other development. So we do face some single-family homes across Park Avenue. I believe they are single-family right there at the corner of Park and Brookes. As you move up towards where our 5-story is, it starts to change to commercial. They are still in single-family structures, but it starts to change to commercial. Yes. But then everything behind us is retail, commercial, everything across Brookes is all multifamily development, 4 and 5 story. I don't know the exact vintage of all of those. Obviously, some of them look like post-war buildings they're a little further up Brookes, but what's right on the corner is about a 4.5 story building. So we think that we are compatible with other multifamily that's come into the district, and so we have looked at to try to at least respond to make this building on the corner of Parks and Brookes something that might feel like a 2-over-2 condo in terms of scale of that, and cut it down a floor. And we have sought some input from the community to things that they might want to see. So having the residential on the ground floor of that corner building, having more masonry on the building, that it feels like a more residential material, trying to find a way to break the mass of that it is more kind of a row house mass when you look at that. I mean, they may say it's not row house mass, but that really is row house mass that you get on those things.
Setback.
Yeah. And the right-of-way dedications that we did, I mean, that comes straight out of the master plan that they asked for. So, that is something that the development is giving because the master plan requires it, much like the commercial service road. So, we had, the original design had more pitched roofs on it. We are balancing planning and the community in the different needs, and they're not always aligned. So we have tried to move this development along to take in commentary that we get, which can't solve every problem in a development, right? So we're trying to create something that we think does scale to the master plan. But a 4-story building is not going to scale right next to a single-family home. It just never is. But that exists in this district today with this disparity of scale when you move up to more density. That's just sort of the reality. So I think what you try to do is you try to develop an architecture that tries to be more respectful of that smaller scale and the rhythm of it and the type of windows that you use, the type of materials that you use, how you treat the ground floor, all those sort of things. And so I think, as I said at the top of this, the mass of this development is pretty well set, but it doesn't mean that the details are set. It doesn't mean that we are not interested in continued feedback in how we might detail out that building in terms of materials or windows or colors or anything like that. So we would welcome that input from the community or from the board. We're not saying that this is it, this is cooked. I think we welcome that sort of input. But the reality of development when you get to density, I mean, you can see it in your district today. And some of these projects are fairly recent that have come along. And so I think we can argue credibly that we lay in with that density as it moves up towards the commercial district.
I've got just one more comment, which is...
Yeah, you're still on.
The concept site plan looks very modern and minimalist. And so, like you stated, perhaps it's in the architectural details. As the Old Town District Design Guidelines suggest, parapet walls, and I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, arcade structures. These are the arches. So more of that, I guess, design feature that might be more appealing to the residents. Thank you.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Commissioner LaFrance, you're next.
Well, I don't have any questions. I have more statements.
Okay, please. It's your time.
I guess I should start with, I am also a resident of the Chestnut Beam Historic District. And the reason why this is important is because we had some infill some years ago where a new house was being built. And myself and our community came together and worked very hard on pushing for responsible guidelines for architectural details. And we asked the developer to take a drive around the neighborhood and to take elements from the neighborhood and incorporate those elements into the new house, in which the architecture is a little bit of my house, a little bit of the house across the street, a little bit of a house next to it, and it's made a nice fit. Even though it is a new house, it's fit well in the neighborhood. I agree with a lot of the callers that called this evening. I don't agree with the tentative architectural plan that's come before us tonight. It lacks distinctive architecture, details, and a unique presence. And it does not incorporate into it anything that would be surrounded by it. So I would suggest you go back to the table and you take a drive around the neighborhoods. And I don't mean look at the apartment buildings per se, but the lower buildings, the homes, and the businesses that used to be homes, all of it. And see if you can glean some more appropriate architectural details for this building. I see this building as being a mirror image almost of a building that's over in Crown that is right there at Fields Road and San Mike Highway with a lot of black and a lot of brick. And it's big and it's heavy. And right there, where no homes are, is perfectly fine. But this would definitely tower over the current buildings that are there. And to me, it is completely inappropriate for this particular neighborhood. And that's
Okay, thank you so much. All good comments, thank you. Commissioner Feinstein?
A couple questions before I question the applicant. I guess to Chris, did I miss, was there a meeting previously with us regarding this plan? Because
No.
okay.
No,
What-
but
that
it does,
confusion-
it's very
'Cause-
confusing.
yeah,
I
now.
can tell you what happened, if I
Yeah,
didn't
if
mean
you
to
could,
interrupt.
'cause-
Here's the thing, it was on our agenda. And that night, we were given, prior to that night, that to be included. So we all saw the proposal.
Right.
But that particular night, it got taken off the agenda. So if somebody in council, mayor and council, said that we had reviewed it, technically, we did not, because it wasn't an open forum, but we did see it. But I don't think that would affect their decision, which was the ultimate thing, whether or not we saw it that night and talked about it, and give a courtesy review at that night. I don't think it would affect their
I just want to
decision
clear the
whatsoever.
record because it's a little bit confusing.
Yeah,
It
that's
is
why I'm glad you
confusing.
asked, because I wanted to, because I knew what they were talking about when I heard it.
Yeah, because it obviously wouldn't have impacted our, because we rolled how we rolled, but,
And we wouldn't have been allowed to look at it anyway, because
Right.
we're not supposed to judge it on what's
Exactly.
coming, but what was before us.
And maybe that's why it was pulled.
Maybe.
As a matter of fact, when it got pulled that night, I was wondering why it was even on the agenda, because we were reviewing the existing houses at the time.
Exactly.
So it was, in my opinion, a quite proper move not to review it at that time.
Exactly.
you mentioned community meetings. How many community meetings have you had?
We had two.
We had at least 3 or 4 meetings. And then I have met.
You had some.
Yeah, and then I met personally with lots of people in this neighborhood.
Okay, so there are public community meetings
We had
advertised? now?
two, yeah, we had two that I participated in that were open and by community meetings.
Okay.
At the time, it was pandemic, so they were all virtual. Well, it was hard for me to tell, they seemed fairly well attended.
Okay.
And we have personally knocked on the doors and met a lot of people in this community.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you have any section studies through Park Avenue, cross sections showing the houses and the scale of the houses next to the proposed structures?
I don't hear tonight, no.
Okay, but you've done those?
We've done those.
Okay, I think that would be helpful for our review, to kind of see the scale. Because I think one of the things, I mean, I know you referenced across Brookes Avenue, the multifamily there, but that's kind of buried a little bit in terms of grade. So even though there's 4 or 5 structured buildings there, if you look at the topo, it varies down. So along Brooks, it doesn't feel that way as much. And it's a little bit detached, where this directly across Park Avenue with those homes, it's at the same grade. It's right upon it. So there's kind of no use of, natural topography to kind of minimize the scale. So no matter, like what you had said, no matter what you do, you're facing with a 4-story building across from a single-family house. So that is a problem in terms of compatibility. I think it's just a basic problem in terms of compatibility. And if that's what our purview is to judge the compatibility, that's a major, I mean, that is the major issue. So whether or not it's allowed by zoning or the planning commission and things like that, that's on their behalf. Our behalf is to judge it compatible against the historic neighborhood, and it's a problem. And I think you acknowledge it as well. So I think, Mary Jo, your comment about the building crown, the Copley, I believe it is, it's kind of the same thought I had. And I think what you've designed is a handsome building. It's a good looking building. And, but I think in Crown, it would feel very appropriate. It's hard to square that with the neighborhood feel here. And, there's a big difference between Brooks and Park and what you have on Diamond and the multifamily structures on Diamond, which is truly a commercial, higher density space. I'm concerned about a lot of issues, traffic being a huge issue. I know you may consider that not to be part of our purview, but I think that goes to the compatibility issue as well, and how those cars affect the historic nature of the neighborhood. I think really will have a major impact on the setting that we have here down Brookes Avenue as it goes into the single family homes just across the street. The commercial space, there's a gap between Diamond and the commercial, and I'm concerned from I guess it's more of a planning concern. I'm not sure it's the purview, but whether it'll be be leased, it'll be occupied right away. I know that we've had issues in the city with that, with other multifamily structures trying to do mixed use. Those are my major concerns. I think if you look at, just go to page 12 or 13 of the presentation, if you don't mind.
I don't know which one is.
That one.
Okay.
I think if you look at the left side of the screen, which represents the single-family houses versus the building, you get a sense of the scale difference, first of all, but it also kind of misrepresents, and I understand why, but it misrepresents the single-family houses as boxes, which makes the building feel somewhat more balanced with the neighborhood. And on page 13, it's a similar mechanism being utilized with the house in the rear of the rendering. And I think I know it's not disingenuous. I know it's more just to give a scale. I know it wasn't the intention, but I do think it misrepresents the feeling of the neighborhood to some degree.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Mary Jo was saying. I think it's a problem. I think the architecture, I'm an architect. I think a lot of what you've designed and what you're talking about with scale, with the row house motif and the rhythm of that, I think that's valid. But whether that's valid for this neighborhood is my concern as a commissioner. You mentioned one thing I'm concerned about. You mentioned I guess balancing the planning and community needs, and I was wondering what you meant by that.
Well, there's requirements on things that planning requires, and communities typically has a broader purview, right? So all projects balance governmental requirements, community concerns, and market forces. I mean, this is all private development. It doesn't really matter what kind of development. Private development has got to meet a market somewhere. So part of our job is to try to balance all of those things and get a project done. And you try to make a project that meets the market and delivers something that's of value. But but not everybody ends up happy. I mean, that's true of every project we probably have, whether it's commercial, residential, civic. I mean, you know, this development can be disruptive to any community, so we understand that. So that was all the comment was, is that sometimes they're competing in a sense.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, we could get into further questions and comments about the actual overall design, and I know it's early in that, but I think we're almost from our purview, or at least my belief with the purview, I think it's overall before we even get there, the scale as it relates to the compatibility across the street is difficult to get past.
Okay, but I'll let you finish. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead. That was fine.
Okay, good. I mean, good that I'm not interrupting, not good that you've done. The developer has a need to make his project viable, all right? So they believe, rightly so, I imagine, that the density gives them the profit that they need to create this project. So my thoughts are that I don't see them reducing the quantity of units, regardless of what we say. And they do, from what I understand, and maybe I'm mistaken, maybe I'm missing something, they do have the legal right to build this density. So I think that if all
Well, there is a
that's
waiver
true.
for the height, apparently.
Yes.
So, but the waiver has been approved though, right?
No, it hasn't gone yet.
Oh,
They have to
okay,
ask.
okay, I didn't realize, well, that helps then, because if the waiver is not granted, and the city council knows that there is opposition to that, then that does matter, I agree with you there. But do you want to go anything further before I start my thoughts?
I think, I guess in terms of the articulation of the forms, just, I think if, as Dean's saying, if there's nothing we can do to stop the overall massing and scale of the process that's already been through, the process, I do think there needs to be, for this neighborhood, there needs to be more articulation of the massing. There needs to be some brick coursing, some detailing of the masonry. I know you haven't got there yet, but there will need to be a lot of that to bring it, and I think that's something that will kind of hopefully bring it to more of a residential scale.
There are enough examples in Old Town alone of new buildings that were built to fit in, that were a little bit taller than the buildings next to them. So we could also give them some examples, but I think it would be
that's what,
best.
this is my point, I guess, is that's what I think tonight is really what it's all about.
Well, I guess that's a question for the city then. What type of purview do we have in terms of a courtesy review? Because typically, when we have a courtesy review, it's.
Just say no.
I mean, typically, it's different than this, where we're not talking about the overall mass of the structure. We're talking about details of the structure. This is a different animal. So if you guys can explain from a legislative standpoint.
Well, I think Chair Ventola summed it up at the introduction when he listed the purview of the HDC. It's the architectural compatibility. It's the effect.
Right,
or
but that's
impact.
it can be a macro or a micro.
Right. Yeah, you can go as wide or as narrow as you want.
But my belief, may I interject, is it should be micro, because these buildings need a micro touch. They don't have it. And if we don't suggest things to them now, they may go on a different path or come back with the same path with some minor changes that does not incorporate our suggestions. So my point is, let's give them suggestions.
Exactly.
You guys already did, but I'm saying if you can think of some more, my belief is they're open to it, which, by the way, I was very glad to hear. It's still not my turn yet, so forgive me. But.
And I know we've done plenty of courtesy reviews in the past, but we've typically never done a resolution at the end. Is that something that?
Well, is there going to be a resolution at the end?
No, there won't be a resolution.
It's just a courtesy review.
Right,
A memo will be prepared,
And there's no
delivered to the
voting.
planning commission.
Right, generally, Chris will
Doing
basically
an
take all
analysis.
that you say, so by
Synopsis.
making one point, you're not cutting off something else. The focus can be both on the broader scale as well as some of the details that, I mean, several of you have already spoken to some of the details as well. Mary Jo did, in terms of picking up some of the other elements of the neighborhood, and that's what the chair is also focusing on. That these are comments that the Planning Commission is going to be looking for in terms of what is going to fit with the neighborhood. Some of them can be broad, but some of them can be more detailed as well.
Yeah, but this is our chance.
Even though
Right.
we cannot say a condition like we would if we were voting, we can say the HDC strongly suggests height limit. Stay with the city code, these kinds of things.
Sure.
And I think if we all feel strongly about that, that we should say so.
I think you just
And-
did.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it'll already, by the way, and I've looked at over the years, yes, I think it's already included, because that is one of the comments that would be provided.
And it's a good one.
Okay, just a couple more comments about the actual, the architecture as presented. I think the storefronts along the 5-story structure along Park Avenue, I think they conflict a little bit in terms of having the open glassiness across the street from the housing. I'd like to see that handled a little, and I understand it's a retail space, but I think you can bring some elements down.
Yeah, I would say that if you look at the more, they're square arches, but the rhythm of the columns that are on the 4-story building will
Yeah.
come into the 5-story.
I think, yeah, I agree.
So I think having some of that brick come down to the ground will help that building. So,
Mhm.
and it's, you know, the retail has shrunk a little bit, so, you know, as this has evolved, we've got a little bit more service space. So I think that'll just help ground the
Yeah,
buildings.
agreed.
I think to the point of brick detail, and we don't really show that in these renderings, but, you know, soldier courses over windows and silk courses under windows and brick banding that goes around, all those things that you would see in residential will show up in this project as it develops along.
Well, couldn't we go further and do things like transoms over doors?
Yes,
And-
this is the time.
Transoms
over doors.
Transom over doors, side lights, so it gives the appearance of an older storefront instead of a modern one. I think all that glass is way too much. And again, about picking up architectural details from what's already there, what's already in Old Town, what it's already in that neighborhood. There are perfect examples of the older looking storefronts that give you the glass, but also the more architectural details that are important.
And I think finally from me, the windows and the balconies, I think, I normally, architecturally, I love the look of the red brick with the bronze or black windows. But I think for this location, I think looking at a lighter window, a lighter rail might be helpful to make it more compatible with the houses across the street.
Quiet it a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay, good. All right, so it's next, my turn. I appreciate very much that you guys are open to, if I'm understanding it correctly, I should say, redoing the facades, not the massing, but the detailing, the materials, the patterns, and even some of the ideas of the roof and the entries and stuff like that. So you're open to that. So based on that, that's fantastic. My thought was, from the moment I saw it briefly, the time we were supposed to review it, I was honestly saying to myself, this is not appropriate for where it's going. I can't argue density because I already presented that. That is something that this project needs to be viable. So I don't ever argue density.
What does that have to do with us, though? Like, that's not our problem.
Hold on, please. I do want to say that everybody had their chance to speak, and this is not the time to do it. Please forgive me, but right now it's just the commissioner speaking. And we're trying to decide, based on our questions based on conversation that we're having and that we've heard from the applicant and from the citizens. So that's where we are right now. So please don't speak out on that. If you do have other comments you want to have made, you can certainly email them to the city. It's certainly your right to do that. But anyway, where I was, to me, I appreciate that the massing is broken up, but to kind of mimic, row houses or whatever. But if you could turn to page 13, please. What I was seeing is something that looked less like row houses that you see in Georgetown or any of the expensive, well-maintained areas. I see this more, and I almost hate to say this, almost looks too much like what you see in the Rust Belts, where they were beautiful pieces of architecture maybe a long time ago, and they came in and did very simplistic, flat projects. And I see that it doesn't have the life, to me, that a very nice, elegant townhouse would have, even though the massing is broken up, and I appreciate that. The areas that you have facing the street in this particular thing, I guess it's the commercial area, it just does not look inviting to me. It just looks a little bit too harsh. Essentially, that's the word that came to my mind then, and it's still coming today. You can correct all the things that I think we were saying and create a very elegant and compatible building with most of the massing that you currently have. But there's just too much going on, in my opinion, that once you go and break with a traditional residential architecture, which is a pitched roof and low scale, once you break with the height, the scale, the materials, the colors, then in the end, you don't have compatibility at all. You have something that is completely uncompatible. And so if you can or cannot, or if you do or do not get the right to build the fifth floor, that's a separate issue. The lower the massing, the better. But essentially, right now, it doesn't look like it fits in this area whatsoever. It actually overwhelms all these other homes. To me, there's so many different things that you could do. Right now, you have dark on dark brick with dark rails. The materials are very hard. You got brick and steel. And so when you look at, can I ask, you had a video up where I think it was your video where you were flying over the area.
That's the city's video.
Okay, could you put that on? It was just anywhere in the middle area. I mean, I'm talking about the middle of the project was that your flyover was. It'll show my point very, very strongly, or clearly, I should say.
You're going to have to give me a few moments. If
Sure,
you want to keep
okay.
talking, I can pull it up.
All right. If I didn't already say this, to me, these buildings do not look like apartments. To me, they look more like office buildings. And if this was an office building over at Rio, I don't think any of us would have any concerns. This is great. What I'd like you guys to look at are the roofs of all these surrounding pieces of architecture. And that really is strong imagery for residential. So when you have a very, very tall building and then make it a flat roof, it is fighting everything. You can pause it right here. This would be great. You can see the houses on the left, the houses in the front. Some of them are going to be gone, but the building in the background, that apartment complex. What this does for me is pretty much takes a massive project, massive quantity of units, and breaks it down as best it could. You've got the the crenellations of the bump outs, which you guys have done, but here it's a little bit more residential than commercial. You have the roof, which is, to me, a major issue. That is a residential roof. That helps, even though this building is going to tower, this building towers over the neighbors, it's a whole lot more compatible than a flat, very contemporary, flat-roofed, very contemporary building. It also breaks up the massing as far as the materials are concerned. You can see that it's got, I think it's a brick base, and then you have the siding above. Well, that helps an awful lot, in my opinion, to break up such a tall 4-story building. It isn't as massive visually by breaking it up that way with a tall base and a lighter upper story, which is the third point, is that they are using very residential homeowner materials, that is siding over brick. Whereas you're just doing the whole thing in brick. Now, I can tell you, most people would think an all-stone house would be absolutely stunning and extremely expensive looking and very valuable. I've seen all-stone houses, 2 stories tall, stone houses that they just pick the wrong stone and it looks awful. And there's some very wealthy people who live in those particular things, and they just missed the boat on it. I mean, just because it's a good, expensive material, misplaced in its massing hurts the project, not helps it. So my point is, I think that mimicking those structures, you can see they're surrounding all over the place here for the new apartments that are going in. Having that residential look for those 3 things that I mentioned, I think will help absolutely completely turn around, in my opinion, the imagery of your project without changing the density or without changing the massing too much. So those are my thoughts. But then lastly, for detailing, I think everybody, by the way, I agree with everything everybody has said here tonight, including the members, of the citizens. All of these are valid points, but the most important things for tonight, in my opinion, is to give you guys guidance as to what you could be adding. So it was already brought up for brick arches. I think that when you have very rigid, simplistic building massing, if you can add things that give it a residential quality, a town feel about it, that would be very helpful. And offhand, I was thinking that you just do accents in your building, and Mary Jo already brought it up with the storefronts. If you could make all those storefronts, if you look at a traditional storefront back, I don't know, 50 years ago, with you had a lot of wood and a lot of, you still have the big open glass, but there's a whole lot more character. I guess that's the word I'm looking for the whole time. A whole lot more character than just glass and steel mullions. Brick arches, accents, and then there's another big thing that if you use the brick that you use, and again, I'm hoping that you do not do the entire building as, big 3-4 story tall brick, breaking it into a base with an upper story, perhaps with the siding and all. If you do go with brick, maybe make it lighter color, and then go with a handmade brick versus a wire cut. I would never choose wire cut brick if I had an option, because it just does not feel comfortable. It just seems too industrial. So that's it. Those are my comments.
Can I add?
Yes, by all means. Well, the commissioner's up in forum now. You guys just jump in, say anything you want.
No, I appreciate, Dean, what you're saying with the micro level of review, and I do think, as we get through this process, we need that as well. But I do believe if our commission, ours is the only commission in the city that kind of, speaks for the historic nature of the city. We look at it from a different purview than planning department. We look at it from a different purview than from the mayor and city council. So I think if we do feel from a historic standpoint that the massing is incompatible with this across the street or down the street, I think we should strongly, not just have it as a point of the minutes, but actually have it, if we can kind of have a unified
official statement to
that. I think we we need to, if we all are in agreement, I think we need to do that. Because I think that's the only way
I'm all
that
for that.
it can be, you know, it can, I mean, this isn't, I mean, this, yeah, it's a courtesy review, but I think it's a little more than that. There's other elements that we need to take into account.
I agree with that, but I think the biggest thing that this project may have going for it is that the ownership is interested and willing to make it more compatible.
And that's why I agree with you. I think we're handling it in a two different capacity. And because obviously we can only go so far with our resolution. So if it goes nowhere, then we need to you know,
Give guidance, right.
to give guidance from a design standpoint. But I do think it's important that we do.
I'm all
it.
for that.
Yeah.
I'm all for that.
And it's more of a statement because that's our purview as the Historic District Commission.
Okay. Okay, keep going. Anything further? Nobody else? Okay.
Think so.
All right.
I just, may I, if you don't mind?
By all-
I know
by all means.
we're not having a conversation, but I just wanted to clarify for anyone who doesn't understand. The zoning of this area is completely out of our hands. Massing and things like this are all decided by the city government, and so that is out of our hands. So what we have before us tonight is a massing that is allowed, except for the extra story, that they would have to ask permission from the mayor and council. And that's all I have to say.
But one other thing with that, the pitched roofs, and I think it's a very valid point to have the pitched roofs. As soon as you introduce the pitched roofs, then we have a much bigger height issue without reducing the story.
Which is where we started.
That's where we
Project
started.
originally had
Which is a
pitched
great
roofs.
question. I forgot to ask. Who suggested to you guys, if you once had a pitched roof, to not have it?
There's a height
It
issue.
was really, it became a height issue, became a mass issue and a perception of mass. So we weren't against pitch roofs. The original design had that. And it could work.
Was it city council? You don't have to name names, but was it the city council or is it
It wasn't
another?
council, it was just, I think it was just discussions maybe with community or planning, that there was just a sense of the building, that the roof, because once you do that pitch, right, you're adding 12, 16 feet to the height of this thing.
Yeah, but.
And it does
Gotta
lay
slope.
back,
There
and
was
I would agree
lot
with.
of opposition in the community about the pitched roof, so we took it out. There was also a bridge connecting the two.
I think you would lose a story if you pitched roofs.
There was a bridge connecting the two buildings. We also took that out because there was opposition from the community.
That's interesting. 'cause
And I told you, I have met, I mean, you see some people speaking against the project. There are lots of people who support this project in this community. They don't come to speak. And I've knocked on the doors, talked to all of those people, and they support this project. So keep that also in mind.
Well, if we start a recommendation about height, and the pitched roof adds some height, then it's a wash, so it's all right. Right?
I'm not following it.
Okay. So they're only allowed without permission to go so high. And the pitched roof, yes, allows some height, but as you already said, it's at an angle. If they follow our recommendation and they don't get the permission for the next height, then it will be an even, see what I mean?
Chris, is it?
I like the idea of the pitched roof.
Is it a
I
height
agree
or a
with you.
story issue?
Story.
So that's what I was thinking, it's a story issue. So whether it's got a roof, a pitched roof or a flat roof, does not affect the 5-story issue. It's
So
a
zoning
story.
doesn't have a maximum height.
No, it's up to 9 stories. By right, they're allowed 4 stories. Any taller, they need mayor and council sign off. So from 5 to 9, mayor and council is involved.
And the other thing too is that the roof by code is generally 50% height, pitched roof. So.
Yeah, it's your average slope.
Right. So I personally think that
I
it gives it
believe
a whole lot more
Yeah.
residential feel
Yeah.
with these residential houses. Now, if all these houses had a flat roof and they all look like they were more, straight, something like you would see in Old Town Greenbelt, those boxes, then yours would be perfectly appropriate there. But that's not what we have here.
We don't have an issue with the picture.
That's wonderful.
Good.
That's wonderful.
Because I would support a pitched roof. I think
So
that's
what
an
do you
excellent
guys think? I know
idea.
you're the modernist. Would you be?
No, I think
against
I'm a modernist, but not here. This is not, not a place for that.
that? No, I didn't mean to imply that.
Yeah.
I was
I
just
agree.
thinking that you appreciate
Yeah.
modern architecture.
Mhm. But I agree. I think for
Okay.
this particular location, I think I think a pitch roof would be
Commissioner
helpful.
I
Ramirez?
agree
Ramirez?
as well.
Oh, well, there we go, unanimous on that one, so good, all right. What other thoughts do you guys want to throw their way to help them create something that's more compatible? I think all the ideas that we had are pretty good.
Yeah.
Then maybe not, you don't need too many more.
So then I guess I have a question. So that we've done our courtesy review. Will everything we said this evening go off to the planning commission?
Yes.
When will it come back to us?
Final site plan, so that's up to the applicant when they can get those plans ready for us.
So
And that's
we will-
post-traffic study.
Correct, everything will be included in the final site plan.
So we will see this again and still be able to comment on the architectural details to come before us. So
Yeah,
we
but
got-
it'll be a courtesy
It's another
review
courtesy.
still, and at
Yeah.
that point in time, then they'll have construction drawings done.
Okay.
So it may be too late at that point in time.
So we hope you heed our suggestion.
It
and
sounds like they
go
will, by the way.
Around Old Town and look for some architectural elements that can be added to make it more appropriate.
Well, also too, if I can interject on that, the city has had several projects, as Commissioner Ramirez already pointed out, that are tall 4- and 5-story buildings that are already there to see.
Yeah.
See about how compatible they are and how much more residential they are compared to the local houses here. Use those as a guide, I would think.
I have one final question.
By all means, throw in.
Landscape/furniture zone, that seems to surround the property on Park Avenue. What did you mean by furniture zone?
Sorry, I can't zoom in, can I? Because I can't.
Not sure what page this is. There, you can barely read it here, but
I'm assuming that's referring to whatever site furniture
Like
might
benches.
be required by planning.
Like a
Benches and
bench?
things like
Bike
that.
racks.
Like
Mhm.
bike
And
racks.
I don't know that there
okay.
is, but typically on a lot of these projects, the master plan might require site furniture. So it's trash cans, it's benches, things like that.
yeah, the more
Bike racks.
inviting it is for the residents to, partake and use, I think that's also an added benefit to the community.
Okay.
So,
Okay, yes, go ahead.
so do we want to have a summary statement? Basically,
Oh, so you volunteered, so go ahead.
I think the overall statement is that we understand that the zoning may allow for this, but we do think it's, as a historic district commission, that the massing is incompatible with the neighborhood directly across the street. And secondarily, we do think the 5th story, which requires, from what you're saying, Chris, city council approval, would further be incompatible. Secondarily, I think we made it abundantly clear that, with a lot of suggestions, that we hope that you'll listen to that and address for the next round as you move forward. And we appreciate the time and effort you put into this, and we're just trying to be as constructive as possible and protect the Historic District Commission as best we can.
And have an end project everyone can be proud of.
We appreciate that.
Okay, well, very good. Well, thank you, everybody. That ends the courtesy review.
Thank you.
All right, so next then, thank you to everybody who did speak. We all appreciate that, and it was really good information. All right, next then, we have Historic Area Work Permit Review, HIST 8548-2020, which is a 1-year extension request for front porch railing installation and shingle siding replacement at 10 Brookes Avenue in the RB, which is Residential Buffer Zone. May we have an introduction from staff, please?
Yes. So at the HDC September 23rd, 2020 meeting, the HDC approved HIST 8548-2020 for the installation of a front porch railing and replacement of the wood shingle siding with synthetic shingles at 10 Brookes Avenue. The to jog your memory, here is the house, here's a current photo. So the HDC approved that with 3 conditions. The first, applicant must remove installed posts, which were at the porch already, and stairs within 60 days of approval of this application to restore the damage caused to the porch. So they've done that. So this is the finished project. The second was the HDC denied the synthetic shingles and said that the wood shingles must be replaced in kind. And these are some of the original wood shingles on the right side elevation, but the shingles in question were on the left side elevation. So what they did is they installed the shingles, the wood shingles, but they didn't paint them. And we'll go back to, so you can see these are painted shingles, and these have been left unpainted. And then the third condition was that the porch railing must be painted, which they did as well. So the HOP expired last month, and the property owner's representative requested the 1-year extension to give them time to paint these shingles, which are already up, and he said that they're scheduled to be painted in early 2023, so they contacted the contractor. So are there any further questions?
I only have one question on it. Did they turn gray? Did those shingles
Not
turn
yet,
gray?
because this is a
Really?
photo from
This is
earlier
a
this
recent
month.
photo?
Yeah, and they did
Whoa.
this work probably, I don't know if, I would guess they did this in the winter of 20 to
Wow.
21. So that was my guess when I initially saw that they weren't painted, that they were waiting for them to season more, but
Yeah.
now it's been 2 years. So
That's seasoned enough.
I don't know if they just kind of forgot, or if the contractor was difficult to get a hold of, or what, but I jogged their memory and they're on top of it now, as long as you grant
Thank
the
you,
extension.
Okay. All right, so we don't have to do anything other than Commissioners Open Forum. Does anybody have any concerns whatsoever?
No.
No? Okay. Does somebody want to make a motion to approve this extension?
Anybody, you want to try?
Wanna do it?
I
Yes.
move that the
Is this your
historic.
first? Is this your first? Look,
I will.
Yeah, we gotta let her start.
Newbie. I move that the Historic District Commission extend HIST 8548-2020 for 1 year in accordance with Section 24-227.1E of the City Code.
Okay, a second?
Second?
Okay, all those in favor say, actually, let me go down the list then. Commissioner Feinstein?
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Ramirez?
Aye.
Commissioner LaFrance?
Aye.
Commissioner Ventola says aye. Passes 4-0. Congratulations to the applicant both times. All right, next then, let's see here. If I'm not skipping ahead, we have discussion topics. Is that next?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, so which is historic designation petition priorities. May we have a presentation from staff, please?
So as you're all very well aware, the City Council voted earlier this month not to accept the HDC's petition to designate the properties along Park and Brookes Avenue. And planning staff has received direction from the city manager's office to try to be proactive in identifying properties that may be worthy of designation and preparing the research and taking those petitions for designation to the City Council. So even in a city like Gaithersburg that may not have a lot of older resources, especially compared to with our neighboring communities, we're not going to get every property. For example, the properties discussed as part of the Brookes and Park project, half those properties were listed under other resources of note. Half those properties weren't even in the master plan. So it's difficult to get every property that may be worthy of designation, but we can try. So I'd like to get your guidance, maybe not necessarily tonight may not be the end of the discussion, but perhaps the beginning of the discussion. And we thought that we have the 2018 element of the master plan that can be our guiding document, particularly the potential historic resources section, which I have on the screen right now. So we can go through the list and open up the discussion to the commission to see if there's any properties that really stand out to you. And I'll go through first and just mention some. The first three, Summit Hall, city-owned property, KC Barn, city-owned property, Wells Robertson. Those properties aren't probably going to be redeveloped anytime soon. They're probably safe. Same with Forest Oak Cemetery. I can't imagine anyone's going to want to try to redevelop a cemetery. Ketlin's Caretaker's House is interesting. That was purposely left out of the designation with the Arts Barn and the Kentlands Mansion when they were all designated in 2012 because the owner objected to being designated, but there's been a new owner, so maybe they'd be more amenable to designation. Asbury has a number of large, older buildings, but they do have a clause in their annexation agreement that if they were to designate those, they would have to be the ones to initiate it. So I don't know if they would be the best choice. Same with the next three. We have Grace United Methodist Church and St. Martin of Tours Church and Ascension Chapel. Usually designation isn't really the goal of churches because they're nonprofits, so they can't really take advantage of tax credits, particularly local tax credits, maybe federal and state, but that gets into further details. This building, the Montgomery County Public Safety Headquarters, better known as the former National Geographic Building, that's owned by the county, so that's not something that they'd probably be interested in doing. We know about the Nike missile site that's no longer with us. Gaithersburg, Washington Grove Firehouse, interesting building on East Diamond Avenue. Again, it's owned by the city, so probably safe there. So that leads us to three of these buildings on the bottom, or one up from the bottom, Granary Row, the Bryant Mill, Folk Store, and those are mentioned on the next page here as part of the Old Town Industrial Thematic District. And I have some photos to jog your memory. So if you include these three buildings, these three former mills with the Thomas Cannery, which is designated, there is a potential for a non-contiguous historic district. So this is the Thomas Cannery. We're well aware of this building. Restored about 20 years ago into offices, former cannery building, industrial building along the railroad tracks. Granary Row, this building's not designated. Similar industrial heritage. It's now offices, retail. There's an auto repair place at the end here. Further down Diamond Avenue, this is a storage building. This was a former mill. Of course, the windows have been changed quite a bit, but you can still recognize this as a former mill building. And then again, going down Diamond Avenue, this is another former mill building. So these buildings were pretty important to Gaithersburg's agricultural history, industrial history in the early to mid 20th century. So staff thought those properties, may have the potential to be redeveloped and may be good potential properties to bring to the mayor and council as potentially worthy of designation. Of course, a lot of research would have to be done, but just based on their appearance alone, they appear to be eligible in what we do know about them. So open up the discussion from there.
Okay, one of the questions I want to ask is, when is the last time we, the HDC, actually historically designated anything?
That's Kentlands, probably.
It was either Kentlands or Crown. Those were both close together. I believe it was Kentlands, and that was 10 years ago, 2012.
Yes, see. So I am happy to see that we are moving forward finally. Just wanted to make that comment. Now, as far as the city-owned not being under risk of development, this is why it surprises me this comes before us. Over the years, I have particularly mentioned Wells Robertson House. Also, although either it was an HPAC or an HDC that voted against it, I would like to reconsider historic designation of this city hall. I believe that there's plenty of history right here, and I, for one, as a historic district commissioner, definitely want it to come before us before any demolition plans are involved. And I think we, as a commission, need to reconsider this property for historic designation, absolutely. So, those are my comments on that.
That's a good point.
Yeah, as far as the other properties that have been offered, even though some of them have been changed, as Chris noted, we have to remember our training, which says just because there's been change over time doesn't take away its historicity. So, I vote that we say yes to the properties that have been brought to our attention tonight, but that is not going to be the end of it, but the beginning of it. Because as we've realized, unfortunately, we're not really aware of everything that's out there, and we've sadly lost a chance to preserve.
Yeah.
So, and we need to win, thank you, because we do work hard, and this is our volunteer time, and we need a win. So thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think just because it's a city-owned property, or especially the county-owned property, because I love that building, and I think that I don't know what we're up against in terms of trying to get a county-owned property designated, but
I'm sorry, which is the county one?
the Edison Park.
The
National
former
Geographic.
National
Oh,
Geographic.
yeah,
building.
yes. Yes, I agree with you, Mark. That's a very interesting architectural and very important historically.
Yeah, I think I don't like. I mean, to not even try, it seems counter to our mission. So I do think whether or not all these buildings are necessarily worthy of designation, I agree. Probably some are not, but I do think we should take some time and analyze each one independently.
Exactly.
Whether or not who is owned by, someone who's a city-owned, county-owned, a church or whatever. If it's worthy, we should look at it.
I'm surprised that these haven't been designated.
A lot of people are. Citizens that are not involved in this process, are shocked all the time of so many of the older properties that are not.
And it brings to mind the Crown property that was owned by the city or the county, and then they sold it to private individuals who then wanted to make changes to it. So
Yeah.
that's not assurance that
And Chris, I have a question to you before I forget along these lines. I saw a public hearing sign in front of Ascension Church. So what is that
Yeah.
about, please?
It's not related to the historic or the older church property necessarily. It's an educational use, change of use. So it's no material change. Is that
Okay.
correct, Greg?
Yeah, an educational use requires a special exception by the Board of Appeals for approval. They have one currently, they're making some changes already, I believe, to that approval. So the Planning Commission has a role of making a recommendation to the Board of Appeals on that application, and then the Board of Appeals makes a decision on the special exception before them. There's not any physical changes I can remember with that project or property.
Now, is Ascension Church already on the historic, designated?
It's yes and no. The older chapel building, which
Yes.
is listed here, that is not.
Okay.
Across the street, they also own a former residence, but that is designated.
Oh, I remember,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
So it's
Okay,
yeah.
so I believe that, Ascension Church was 125 years old at the time we were looking at its neighboring property, so that makes it,
That much older.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's it just, our role is we have no role if we don't take the time to go through
Exactly.
the process now. So I'd like to maybe look at 2 or 3 each meeting, maybe at a greater depth, and determine, because I think we had a good, the Nike missile site, for instance, was a good example of, we took the time to analyze it, and we analyzed it, and we looked at it, and then we determined that it wasn't worthy.
Exactly.
And I think we'll kind of look at but you need to take that time in order, I don't want to do it short-sighted and kind of make a recommendation just because it's old.
Right.
Is the Old Town commercial
That is
buildings
not
off-
designated.
Off the record, off limits? Those are the best
Any-
buildings in the
Yeah,
city.
anything is within your purview to request.
Yeah, let's emphasize the word request, but I do want those buildings. Those are the best buildings in the city. They're beautiful. The detailing and the scale is phenomenal, and they'll be wiped out overnight. And there's resistance, I understand, but at least we should try.
And I agree with re-looking at some things that have failed in the past, because there's no reason why not. We need some more information, but we also, it's complicated. I watched the mayor and council meeting, and I listened to all of the commissioners, the council members, and I'm no closer to knowing what they want from us to approve. So I request officially that the HDC ask the mayor and council to join us in our educational opportunities from now on. Because I believe that they need to hear what we're hearing. And as far as a narrow view that we're to consider, my understanding is the mayor and council also that particular night were asked to only narrowly view it as historically appropriate versus what was coming next, just like us. So that's important. They need to understand their purview when they're making decisions as well. So I want to formally ask them to
Yeah, we
please
can
join
certainly
us.
invite them to the annual training.
Yes,
Especially now
please.
that it's mostly virtual, it certainly would be easier
It's
for
so
them
much
to attend.
easier, exactly. So that would be great, thank you. And let's see, what else? Oh, and so hopefully, now, had we moved forward and they accepted our petition, we would have rebuttal opportunity for some of the comments that were made, because ourselves, the mayor and council, and the planning commission would have met together. And I want to say this out loud for the community as well, because this has bothered me that we couldn't rebut some of the comments that were made the night of the mayor and council meeting. That could have happened if we were all seated together and clarified some unclear opinions that may not have been based in fact. There was a lot happening there, and also so that we could have a better relationship, and our hard work and research would be even more understood and recognized. Just some thinking out loud. Also, I have a question for Frank. If we had decided, and I'm going to use a non-legal term, a pushback, we didn't agree with the mayor and council's decision, let's say, and based on what we sent them, and then they wouldn't hear our petition. I was told the last meeting that we could send the petition back. Does that make sense? What, for them to review it? Would we have to have new information if we did something like that?
I mean,
What
there
would
are,
we do?
in terms of,
Is there an appeal
in
process?
terms of what you can do
Yeah.
and what's practical, sometimes there's a bit of a gap.
Yeah.
There's no restriction on your ability to send something back if you wanted to do that. As a practical matter, if there's some additional information, if there's some additional indicia. I do know in terms of focusing on the potential historic resources, I do know that part of the concern there is, let's not have your role be to review every building that's 50 years old that somebody wants to tear down at the time they want to tear it down. Let's get a little ahead, let's take a look. But here's the other point. Let's say we begin looking at one of these properties, and there's a thought, okay, maybe that an independent recommendation should be coming forth. If then somebody comes in at that time and wants to demolish one of those buildings, that actually was the intent of your review of that property, because there's such a short timeline you can work with, partly because of property rights and constitutional rights and all that. If something is in the midst of being reviewed and somebody steps in, that's where you can say stop it. I think the concern the city, if I'm not mistaken, I'm fairly sure on this, the concern of the city manager is, let's not use that 50-year rule to be mostly what you do in terms of looking forward.
Well, we know, we
So
don't
that's
like
the
it
intent.
either.
Well, but it's there for a reason,
Yeah.
and that's your opportunity to look at it. But it's saying, well, why don't we, let's not wait for the demo permit.
Agreed, yeah, let's
Yeah.
get ahead of it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Frank.
Sure.
That, I read that loud and clear, and it's a smart thing to do, because they're saying, well, they're noticing these buildings and want them to
Johnny
be
come lately,
saved,
yeah.
but they're already too late. So it's a
Well,
good
and
idea.
as the buildings that were, it somewhat offends me, but some buildings built in the early to mid-60s now are hitting past the 50-year mark. As I say, I personally find that offensive, but be that as it may.
I don't think you're alone.
But well, our own house. I mean, we have the tags in the basement, built in 72, 73.
Just about 50.
Guess what? Next year. Not that we'd be looking at tearing it down, but uses and zoning and intents change from time to time. And communities around Bethesda that have small houses that, I mean, the house where I was raised on Lone Oak Drive, 660 square feet. And it had a full basement and a 1 floor. In that community, those houses those houses were built in the 40s and 50s. So they've hit the 50-year mark, but not by that much. And many times they're being torn down, and sometimes 2 lots are being bought to put true monster houses there.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's part of the consideration as well. These are listing some that are historic, but if your historic guideline is 50 years old, over time, there's even more to consider because this list gets bigger.
Yeah, well, it's also, I mean, hopefully we're looking at it with some level of sophistication beyond just the age.
Well,
Right.
we do, every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Well, and those are the elements. What happened here? Why is it important? Is there some architectural standout, whether for an individual unit, or does it apply to a whole district?
Mhm.
Those are definitely some of the considerations, absolutely.
And I've said it before, I'm open very much so to the idea of raising that to 60 years, not 50. You know, I'm perfectly willing to do that if that is something that the city is interested in hearing.
Although that being said, I think there is some, and it's not my favorite, you know, I love the classics, but there are some 1950s and
Mid-century,
60s
you say
houses.
that.
Well, those are, at this
yes,
point, they're 60 or more than 60.
that are very,
That's-
very
that's a good point.
interesting architecturally.
But even at 60 years, they would be saved. So
Yeah.
you don't have to worry.
Yeah, I think that 70s show and the architecture and the vinyl furniture, it's time. It's interesting. History that deserves to be remembered.
Well, let's, should we bring it back to this
Yeah.
particular discussion? Do we start with the 3 that you
Well, it's really up to you if that's the consensus, but it's really up to you.
I feel very strongly about the commercial.
to start with those?
Those are absolutely stunning. Did you guys ever just sat there or walk by and just look at all the detailing? You talk about detailing. That stuff was marvelous. The scale it's just the human scale on it is fantastic. The detailing is fantastic, and I would hate to see a dozer go on there. And I know that they're.
Are you talking about the silos and the granite?
No, you're talking specifically at
that corner?
on Summit.
Yeah, Summit and Diamond, I guess, the corner. They're just beautiful buildings. I would hate to see them be knocked down overnight because they're, inside I understand they're having, you know, I don't want to say dilapidated, but they're having issues inside, but the architecture is fantastic.
So,
Sure.
do we have consensus from the HDC? Do you want to have us bring this back at a future meeting, next
Yes.
meeting?
I think next meeting.
We
let's
should
start-
talk about it at every meeting and
Okay.
Yeah, like
work
next
on
meeting,
stuff.
can we start with maybe, yeah, the buildings that Dean's talking about?
We could, staff, we can discuss this before the next meeting and come up with the game plan
Yeah.
and present to you at the next meeting.
Because it can overwhelm the meeting, so we don't want it to
Right.
happen. So, I mean, let's do it in a systematic
Well,
fashion.
and in fairness, there's a lot of background work that involves staff too. in
Exactly.
Looking at the history to see, because of the specific standards, as you point out, it's not just a matter of being a certain age, but what are some of the details and what are some of the historical facts that happened.
Mhm.
Well, and that's the other thing too. I want to make sure that we get some assurances that it doesn't have to be as high as national recognition for the mayor and council to consider it. Because that is very lofty. And we're really looking at locally historic designations because it's important to us, the city of Gaithersburg. And if it so happens to be national, like Summit Hall Farm, for instance, I understand that's being worked on.
Yeah, we do have actually a breakthrough in Summit Hall Farm in that our historian consultant who's looking at overlooked groups in Gaithersburg history, I asked for an update, And he's actually found the names of some of the enslaved people who were on that property, which we had no idea before. So he's making some good breakthroughs there.
That's incredible, and there's a program that would want those names too. I love Ancestry, and obviously, sometimes certain people are having a hard time finding, they hit a plateau of finding the rest of their relatives.
Right.
So
Right.
there is a program, I can't think of the name of it, but would like very much to have those names.
Yeah, yeah. So there is breakthrough
Excellent.
there.
Excellent.
Okay, next, anything from staff? Frank?
No, nothing,
Okay.
nothing more to offer. I'm glad to, I guess, be back, I would say.
Have to say,
Well, hello,
so-
welcome back.
Well, thank you, thank you.
we heard that you really wanted to come back and be
Yeah.
with
That you
us.
missed us.
So thank you for that.
Well, I think your work is important, and I mean, having rebuilt an old farmhouse that should have burned down in a town where I used to live, certainly can appreciate a lot of your focus, because we ended up restoring a lot of the original historical elements only because they were the original historical elements, to the point of looking at windows on the other sides of the house that had no shutters, seeing the hooks and saying, well, then those were original wood shutters that were on there, and doing that.
Beautiful.
And looking at the appearance. So
Wonderful.
glad to be here.
Wonderful. Okay, Chris, anything?
I do have an update,
Okay.
and I'll show you a picture. This is taken today. This is the Crown Farm corn crib, so work is underway
Oh, wow.
on the corn crib. And if anyone from the commission is interested, you are welcome to visit the property. If you want to let me know. I go every Wednesday at 10 a.m. with the project manager, and we meet with the contractor and discuss any issues that are going on. But that would be the ideal time to join, but he said anyone's welcome. He's usually there, from first light until about 2 p.m. So they're hoping to finish by the end of the year. I don't know if that's too aggressive schedule, but yeah, let me know if you want to go out, and he can give you a brief tour of the property.
Wow. Great. Great.
Well, as you know, I've seen it. I've walked every single one of them, but it would be nice to walk through as it evolves.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Chris.
Just wear a hard hat and
Good
strong
shoes.
shoes, right, exactly right. Great.
It's been a while since I've given you an update, but to remind everyone, we are going through a comprehensive review of the city's zoning ordinance. We just recently signed a contract with a consultant to assist staff in this endeavor, and we have a kickoff meeting in December with the consultant and city staff. But I want to let you know, obviously, we'll bring you guys along during this process. I don't see a lot of probably changes to the historic preservation ordinance, since we recently have done that ourselves in-house with Chris's work. But there may be some tweaks as well that may come out of this when we talk with our consultant. But you'll see postcards for everyone who lives in the city, where there's going to be a lot of public engagement in the process. Again, if you have any questions, obviously feel free to reach out to me myself. But I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. And like I
I'm
said,
sorry, I just need to hear it again. I kind of blanked out. So it's a possibility of rezoning.
no changes to zoning.
Okay.
The zoning ordinance was last comprehensively reviewed in the 60s.
Okay.
The city is a very different city than it was in the 60s. And a lot of the zoning ordinance is either outdated, there's bad references, whatnot.
Okay.
So we are, the staff, right, are going through an endeavor of reviewing the entire ordinance and then making changes to it. So basically repealing the entire ordinance and reenacting it.
Okay.
We expect it's probably about 18-month process to get it done.
The state does that with the state statutes from time to time. I think it's happened twice that I've been around where, for instance, the zoning code used to be Article 66B
Right.
of
I
the
remember that.
Maryland Annotated Code. Well, not anymore. Now it's the land use article, and we've gone to named articles. And that is partly to make sure we're using the correct language, but also when you change certain areas here and certain areas here and you don't over here, to make sure there's consistency as well.
So again, I just wanted to make the commission obviously aware of this. again, the historic preservation ordinance is part of the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
So again, you will be involved. Again, we'll brief you on the process as well as we go through it.
Good, excellent.
Thank you. All right, anything from the commissioners? Kathleen?
No, nothing for me, thank you.
Mary Jo?
Oh, I think I've said plenty.
Mark?
Same.
Wonderful. I have nothing other to say other than we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.